Okay. Overview of the episode. Every time I think that I have like a good like speaking voice, and then I go to try, it's like some section of my brain like short circuits. It's like, just kidding, you can't talk. You can't talk smooth. You can't talk sexy. You can't. No.
Every time.
Hey guys, welcome back to Diet Jesus. My name is Maple.
And I'm Arianna.
And today we're going to be discussing Breaking Bad's famous episode, Ozymandias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rad.
Okay. Okay, guys. Well, let's go ahead and break into this.
Let's get into it. So we know that the previous episode, we are on that cliffhanger where are they gonna have the shootout with the neo-Nazis and Hank and Walt and Jesse, and everybody comes together in a mess even after Walt tells them not to come.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys watched our reaction to that episode, all I kept thinking was I was like, they're gonna come, it's gonna be terrible. Like, I was so stressed out. I was like, this is going to end so badly. And then when we open on it, it's like it's all right back there, and it's like, oh god. And it's we're right back into that.
So we get like another cold open, which this show is infamous for.
So good,
the best cold opens out of any show that we've ever watched. And it does a flashback. We get a flashback to the very first cook of Walt and Jesse out at the desert, which is the same exact location that Walt has chosen to bury his money in. It's them in the RV, him in his little whitey tighties, and they're in there.
Hair.
He has hair.
They have hair.
I was like, I love how flashing them back is just giving them hair.
Yes, I do. And Walt, a
visually,
very bushy mustache, not a goatee.
Yeah, just visually, all they did was just like be like, okay, hair.
Because you see Walt, and you're like, you know what? He looks like a high school chemistry teacher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he really does. He's like, oh, you know what? And like, it's when you're so like, man, this man's desperate. He just really wants to make money for his family, and this is what he can do, and this is what he can do well.
Yeah.
And like, you understand. It's like, you know, in the beginning, I respected the hustle. I understood it. I was like, oh, but the parallels of the way that we also get the first lie to Skyler phone call.
Well,
and him plotting out his lie and like talking of like what he's gonna say to her during the call. Like, it's crazy how far we've come.
Yeah. Well, and like if it wasn't already as intense as ending on the last episode, opening with the cold open here, really, like the way that they do it kind of drives the knife in further and creates more of a stark contrast from where like the present day is and like the devastation around what is happening. Like, at this shootout, like just utter devastation all the way back to, like you said, like almost it feels so simple.
It feels so simple. Like, yes, like I have a problem. I have a solution. This is what we need to do. This is who I'm going to do it with.
Well, and truly at the beginning, it felt more well-intentioned.
Yes,
there was,
it does.
There were
it feels
better intentions. And like you said,
you can understand why one would turn to the drug business.
Yeah. And like you said, a chemistry teacher who could literally hardly tell a lie. Yeah, and Skyler
had to practice.
It's just like, can we get pizza?
And like no questioning it.
No questioning.
That's like, could you just pick up food on the way home? And you know what I mean? To see where they are now in the dynamic and how like she questions everything this man says, and you know what I mean? It's like the faith and trust, and how solid they were at the beginning of this. To where they are now, and just seeing that, like, so, like, just not, he would never let it. Why would I even possibly have to think about it? Like, she's just like, yeah, awesome, sounds good. Like, he sucks.
It feels like when you have your life like how they say, like, when you pass away, your life flashes before your eyes, you know, and to create that, to add that contrast, that's what it felt like to me. Was like we went from seeing like chemistry teacher can hardly tell a lie, like not really any discourse between him and Skyler, like into this just like, then you have to like, as the audience, like you're reconciling with the fact that you just watched an entire play out of his like descent into this ruthless persona
in a year,
into Heisenberg.
Yeah.
In a year. Like just like fat, like in it. And in my head,
awesome
it's just
technique.
Like, that's what's
awesome technique.
Yeah. That's what's playing out in my head. And it's happening. And like, you're just seeing like it dissolve on the screen, and then it, you know, it goes to nothing.
And then
and then it fades back in where we left off.
And yeah, so well done.
And it's so good to throw something in that feels like almost like peaceful
Yeah.
and nostalgic. It's the first hit of nostalgia for me that I had, I think, watching the series was this episode. And that callback, the just that tone, having that nostalgic tone.
The shift is
just
crazy.
And then they just immediately shatter it again.
Yeah. It's kind of like the shattering of his plans too. You know what I mean? Like it's like this is what I intended, just to still be happy, still be doing my thing. This is supposed to be a side hustle. This is supposed to be a way for me to get this money while we're doing this fastly. So in case something happens to me, to the fact that we're now in the middle of the desert, in the middle of a shootout with some neo-Nazis.
Yeah, like, exactly. No, what? And so then
what? How did you?
How did we get here? Yeah,
exactly. It's like, how did Walt go from that chemistry teacher to trying to get Nazis not to kill his
so
brother-in-law?
Yeah, and they establish all of that feeling and intention within the first few minutes of the episode, and then immediately just plunge us back into the chaos and the devastation, and ultimately that ends up defining the rest of the episode. First, just the tragic fate of Hank Schrader.
Oh, it sucks so bad because, oh my God, can we talk about how, like, if you watch Hank in the first, like, couple of seasons, we're like, oh, Hank, that feels gross. But then also you have that turn when he goes to El Paso or whatever and comes back, and now, like, been rooting for Hank for the last, like, 3 seasons. I was like, how are him and Marie just, like, I get, like, they're just, like, doing their thing, like, you know what I mean? Like, even after, like, you know, rebuilding and everything else, you watch him change through having to, like, get his independence back by relearning how to walk and all the things that come with that and everything else. Whatever. To the fact that you're like, not
a last stand, Hank's last stand, like literally his last stand and last moments after being captured by
it's not
Jack's gang.
He's just like, he's shot, he's down, Gomi's dead.
Yeah.
The fact that they just flash over and Gomi is just like so obviously deceased.
Dead. Yeah.
Oh, and his face and like, and then the way it is just played and
he remains defiant. He sticks
remains the DEA agent to the end. It's his life's work. You know what I mean?
And I think that's why I pointed out that Walter was negligent to the fact that he should have known Hank better, and how much Hank was willing to die for his cause.
Absolutely.
Whether or not Hank made all of the right decisions, which I do kind of want to bring some of that up in a moment, but like, because we see the tragedy play out from both ends of the spectrum, right? Yeah. We have somebody that could be labeled as righteous
a little bit
and moral, but he is, you know, like the fact that he was willing to plunge himself on the opposite side of the spectrum. You know, Walt's willing to plunge himself so far into the other side, where Hank's willing to plunge himself into the other side, that now they're both meeting the loss, because they're still both, like I said, it's the drug empire. They're still both involved in this huge storm that neither of them can control. They're trying to control this tiny blip of time, but they're going so far ended on both sides of the spectrum that now they're both screwed.
Exactly. And I'm happy that you really put in the direct quote in there. It's just like really good when he does sound to Walt, because Walt's like, no, like you don't have to kill him. You can do this all this stuff. You can do all this stuff. And it's like, and I know we were both like, no, but they are.
Yeah.
Like no, that's not how this works.
No.
Like, it's like he's still, it's kind of like how we talked about previously. Like he's still kind of romanticizing the drug empire, or being involved in this,
like
or
his his position in the whole thing,
or just because he's not dumb. Again, we and that's why I'm so happy you put the direct quote in here.
Yeah,
the naivety of it all, I guess. Naivety. I'm not saying it right, but y'all get. He's not like he's still naive about certain parts of the fact that he thinks that he can let Hank and get away, and because he's so desperate to like save Hank. But when Hank really does go, you're the smartest guy I ever met, and you're too stupid to see he made up his mind 10 minutes ago. It's like, whoa.
Yeah,
it's hard hitting.
No, powerful. Yeah, final words.
Yeah,
like that. Literally, final words. Like it's a sentiment, but it's also a death sentence.
Yeah, he's like, I know. Why can't you see it?
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that he says it with like gusto almost, and like, you know, it like it's his courage, it's his integrity, it's just, this is it. And
It does so
I
many
already
things.
know,
Yeah.
like
him accepting his fate, because like I said, I knew that Hank was, as a character, would be willing to die for his cause.
right.
And it's a sentiment to Walt. And
And
that
I think it really shifts Walt's perspective. Like, oh, like I
Shit.
really think he finally sees like this is because of me.
Yeah. And then one of our patrons, James S., pointed out a brilliant detail. He said he made up his mind 10 minutes ago is delivered just after the 10-minute mark of the episode. Ooh, the subtle timing is a perfect example of the meticulous attention to detail that Breaking Bad is known for. It's these little things, as James noted in his comment, that elevate the show's storytelling and make moments like this even more impactful.
Yeah, I when I saw that, I was like, that's actually insane. Like,
and I did,
again, when I say the writing is superb, come on.
Yeah. And we looked back, like I pulled up the episode, we looked back, and it's delivered like at 10 minutes and 11 seconds, like literally just after the 10-minute mark. And he's delivering it, which really like does go to show how much attention to detail went into this thing.
Yeah.
Like that is insane. There's other little Easter eggs, but like that, thank you, James, for pointing that out on Patreon, because I would have never known that. I would have never even have known to look for that or how to even catch that. And when I even tried Googling it, I didn't find like really hardly anyone talking about that or any information coming up on that. But that is crazy. Yeah. And I think Hank's last words also show that like despite the terror of the entire situation that they're facing right now, he refuses to beg for his life. So I think it's like, it's all of those things. Just one powerful sentence, and it says like so much.
I think he says it best in that, like his line there is everything that we've been trying to say about why, like, so like stuff that like the choice that Walt has made, where it's like, what, like why do you think, why is your thought process that way? And he says it right there, and it's like, you're the smartest guy I know, but like, man, like how do you not see it?
And it's also like his dignity, you know. It's Hank, it's him, it's I think it's Hank
for sure
holding on to his own dignity, which in part is a sentiment to Walt, and dying for what he did, like his cause.
I do think like Walt realizing like he can't save Hank in this moment really does like kind of be like, whoa.
I think I've been feeling like he's been kind of like manic in his decisions, was the best way that I could have described it in past episodes. But really looking at it, I think that moment dissolves that delusion, that mania, where he feels overwhelmed. So maybe bits and pieces of him are missing context to why he can't stop them from killing Hank. And he should have known that, you know, and like I think he realizes all in that moment, like, oh shit, I maybe can't save the people that I care about. I can't keep them in a separate bubble. I can't keep them safe the way that I thought. And it literally in like seconds of that happening, 10 minutes and 11 seconds in, dissolved. It was his entire frame of thinking. For the longest time,
he used the danger. Everybody was safe. It was never going to come knocking. It was not this, you know what I mean? And then even for Skyler, I think is it the previous episode when they're at the hotel where she's like, "Well, you got to kill Jesse."
Yeah. Please tell me you're speaking in code, basically.
And he's like, "No, I don't have to do it." But even for Skyler to be like, "No, dude. Like, if he's a threat against you, he's a threat against us because we are connected to you. We are none of us are safe." Well, no. And I mean. And I do think it was really hard for Walt to go and make that decision about Jesse. I truly do. But at the end of the day, you know, he still was like, nah, you know, like, okay, well, I can just handle this by just doing that. When you were saying, sorry, but you're saying like the same sentiment of like, no, I'm safe. You're safe. I'm the danger. It's fine. We are good. No one's coming for you. When in reality, it would have been so simple.
Yeah. I also think that this could be one of the first points in the episode, even though it is early. And there's a lot of other points that happen through this episode. But I think that for some of the audience members, this point was a moment that did kind of shatter any remaining sympathy that the audience could have been feeling for Walt up to this point. There's one other point that I think is a little bit more obvious. If anyone had a change of heart with Walt, or felt finally that first, like, that last kind of push where it's like, oh, damn, like, hey, that's too
Can't
much,
wait to
right?
get there.
Yeah. So and I think that Hank dying to some people, that some of that residual sympathy could also be wiped out in that instant as well. And to me, one of the more devastating aspects of this episode is Walt's breakdown of emotion, because it really, that's, I mean, it's a whole bleed over, it's a pour over, it's an entire, like, the cup,
it's everything.
The cup has overflowed. The beaker, as one would say. The beaker has overflowed.
I think it cracked and shattered, honestly, because, it's like, he is, like, Walt truly is hit with, like, hit after hit after hit of everything he did not want to happen going into this, or thought he could always keep separate.
Yeah.
Like, again.
Especially after Hank is killed.
After Hank is killed, it's like immediately, it's like that happens. He can't fix it. He knows he's got to run. He loses all of his money.
Well, and I think he realizes that in that moment, it was his actions that led to his brother-in-law's death.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing he can do.
No. And I think, and we watch all these things that all the things he wanted to avoid, or thought he could avoid, and thought he could control. We watch it happen so fast.
Yeah, it's an it unravels.
Yes.
Like, it's the complete, like, unraveling. And yeah.
Like, I mean, Junior finds out about everything. You know what I mean?
Because
like,
Marie thinks that
like that like he's safe and everything else.
Hank's got it. Yeah, she thought.
Oh my God. So, and I know we talk more about that and stuff later on though too, but like, think about it. Like, all he didn't want to know, he didn't want his kids to know. He just wanted to leave money for his kids. He now only has 10 million, which, by the way, insane. And the guy,
or 11 or something. I don't know.
11 million or something. And the fucking Nazi
fucking take it, all of it.
It's like 10 or 11 million in that one barrel.
Out of the 80?
You got 80. What the fudge are you even going to do with that money?
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're neo-Nazis. Like, I'm sorry. I just don't understand what they're about to do with $8 million. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that they can't be planners or anything, but they themselves don't exactly look like they've got it all mapped out.
No.
Like, Todd is the brains behind.
Hey, at least, as actors, they all have great teeth.
True.
They all have great teeth, so maybe,
and I do think, and I think it's just very, oh God, I know you mentioned it before. It's like, but Walter White ends up like working with neo-Nazis. And the fact that Todd is the brains behind this business to a certain degree, I really think is just very telling from, like, Gus Fring to them where they're at. But
it's a decomposition of the environment,
right?
Which is where I was like, it's another tragedy. We're just adding on to the tragic feeling of all of this, because that's not good. That's not good. It doesn't feel good. And like all of that emotional unraveling, like him getting into the fight with Skyler and then taking Holly and then leaving, like, really leads to this other pivotal point, which is that infamous phone call with Skyler that everyone, like, we all can't help but talk about it. I swear all of the comments are about the phone call with Skyler. It's a lot. Yeah. Like I think at the time that the episode aired, the phone call kind of could have been open to interpretation, because the way that it's done, it's like either you catch it's clearing Skyler, or you're like, you get enveloped in the emotions of it, and you're not sure, but I think that's the brilliance of the writing.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. It's like it's how you perceive the show, and where you turned and how you feel, and that's like that. It's like, oh, I like. Yeah, you're telling on yourself. It's like, but like,
and commenters were saying that there have been other reactors who didn't catch it. They themselves didn't catch it at the first time. I had mentioned when we were watching it, like, oh, that clears her. Like, dude, that clears Skyler. But there's such an intense
emotion attachment that you can't help but bring into watching that.
Yeah, and like there's a part of you that thinks like, yeah, I get that he's like I get that he was clearing her, but also on the other hand, it's like like he sticks to this Heisenberg persona. It's just an interesting way of doing it. And for his final words, like to his wife, it's like, man, how sad for you, dude. Like you created this to the point that this is how your final words to your wife have to be.
Yeah.
Like that is sad for you. That is sad. Like and it just kind of makes me, that's why like, I think the whole time I wasn't necessarily, I don't know what the word would be, but when I was watching it, I was just like damn, like, fuck, like you shot yourself in the foot, dude. Like, the fact that like you now that's how you on record have to conclude that, because that's the persona that you created for yourself. Like that's who you chose to be. So you have to stick. Now you're in a situation where like in order to do what you wanted to do, which obviously was like some remnants of his humility was still there because he wanted to clear Skyler
absolutely
of the situation. But the fact that he had to do it in a way that like was him, like, and he's like crying, you know, like on the phone because he's realizing like, fuck, I have to pull out and be like this alternate
person
persona
that I've been saying I was and I am, but it's not who I want to be in this moment, and it still has to be it.
And it still has to be it.
And I do like too, because it is open interpretation. It's like, and even while he's delivering that speech, it's like, how much of it is he only saying just to clear Skyler, and how much of it is wrapped in truth as well, because he has felt, because I do feel like in that speech we've seen him basically say those things in real time, just not all together at once. Right? He said each piece of that in some different way or another to Skyler previously. Yeah,
but now he really actually in this moment
he's putting it all together and has to
accept himself as the villain. Like he's now accepting himself as the villain.
And I think that plays a big part. And I think that's another where there's a lot of confusion on how we feel about Walt and things of that nature and how we felt about Gus too. And I think it's
because the question could be posed, or was he really expressing his rage and resentment
and everything else? It's one of those things where it's like it could be either or,
and his regret,
and his regret, because or it's, you know what I mean. So it's one of those two things. But if it is his acceptance of the villain, and I just want to touch on this really fast. If this is where we watch Walt realize like, oh my god, I've become this terrible person. This isn't just for me. Like I'm going to lose everything in this moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you watch him realize it, and like you can tell that honestly, at the end of the day, he wanted his family. He wanted to keep his kids. He wanted to keep Skyler. He really, truly did. I think it was adjunct to the power. Yeah. It was adjunct to the ego. It wasn't his main focus. You know what I mean? Like he went in with that being his main focus. And then over time, it was no longer the center of the bullseye. It was just an outer ring. Yeah. Right. So, and I think where there's so much confusion on why we were like Daddy Gus versus Walt is because Daddy Gus was always the villain. He knew he was the villain.
Well, we didn't see we didn't see Gus's tragic, like we didn't see, or we weren't as emotionally, because they did show us a little bit of kind of a turning point for him, but we didn't see all of the tragic points for him in which he decided that he was the villain. It kind of felt like Gus was always the villain, and he always accepted that, and he was very demure, very mindful.
Very demure, very mindful.
He was very cutesy. Like
no, but that's the thing it was like he's a businessman. His business is just the meth deal, and I've built this empire, and he had a vendetta, and he had a vendetta against the cartel. So then, but
it felt to me that he was born into that.
Exactly. Like it's the same way I feel like when people are like, but you like mom movies. Like, I fucking love Goodfellas, and everybody is terrible. I know that. Yeah. But because I already know they're terrible, and none of them are trying to convince me otherwise. Like, the movie is never at any point trying to convince you that Henry isn't a mobster. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he's so bad. The movie ends with him turning everybody in, and him in the witness protection program. He's been bad. He said he wanted to be a wise guy. But the fact that Walt, to a degree, still is like, nope, gonna keep my family, gonna keep my wife, everybody's safe, we're all gonna be like this, and nothing is and I have control of the situation. This phone call is him realizing I never had control of the situation as well. Yeah. And I think that's and him saying like, "Oh, I'm bad," and this, you know what I mean? It's that realization,
and
like
it's him not even saying, like, it's not any,
yeah,
and it's like he didn't even technically say it, but he did.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that it's delivered,
Oh, incredible.
and the fact that so many people, like so many of you in the comments, so many of our commenters on Patreon, even us,
Yeah.
like kind of debate the nature of the phone call really just shows how freaking good the writing and the acting is. Again, it just shows it again, like how incredible, like, they did when they wrote this series.
Yeah.
Vince Gilligan later confirmed that the phone call was intended to clear Skyler.
Right.
So that really does clear the air, but I think it's awesome that they kind of left a moment of pause to allow people to debate
interpretation
and interpret the art, basically just interpret the art that they put on screen and like allow people a moment of discourse and shock. And
because it's because like when we were in it, because we're already so in it, it's like it's kind of funny because we even like went down, like when we went downstairs and we're like, oh my God, that episode. And Chad's like, did you see his face? Did you see her face? And I was like, no. I was like, I was too wrapped up in the emotion and the tone. No, I'm going to go back and rewatch that. I missed it.
No, and I wrote a thought down specifically. So I kind of thought that like Walt utilizing the harsh, menacing tone of Heisenberg, he, like, Walt did seek to shield Skyler, because regardless of whether or not we felt like he was doing a good job at that, and like, you know,
we knew he didn't want Skyler involved. Like, he didn't actually want to take Skyler.
But it does show, like, ultimately, like, despite that, like, he did want to shield Skyler from legal repercussions. And like, this means that makes that point is him in his final, like, even though it's sick and fucking twisted way of showing one final act of care for his family. And it's just one scene out of this entire episode, and it leaves this huge lasting impression. And it really, really, really got everyone, I mean, like, everyone talking. But for everyone around him, and I think I felt the devastation for everyone around him more before feeling it for him. I really felt it finally when we got to the phone call after he'd taken Holly.
For sure. Like, you see how,
and specifically, like, his relationship with Jesse. Already strained.
My God.
Yeah.
If you would have told me this man was really gonna tell them to I see Jesse.
Yeah.
You haven't killed him yet, and I killed you.
Yeah. And it disintegrates. Yeah. When he reveals that he watched Jane die to Jesse. And
in a way that he basically says, I let her die.
Yep. And in the same swoop, orders Jack to kill him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, isn't that so, like, if you would have told me that's how this goes, because even before, you know, as much as we talk about our disdain, I still believe that he truly did care about Jesse. I truly.
Oh, in his own sick and twisted way.
I was like, he generally does. When he finally was going to kill Jesse, it was because he didn't want to get caught by the DA and everything. You know what I mean? So it was like, I generally, like, didn't think that he would give him up, though. The fact that he's the one who spots him, sees him, says, there he is. He's going to get taken to get him for what information that he already told the DA. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, you're getting taken to be tortured and given information and then probably
held captive.
Killed.
Tortured and then forced to cook meth.
Tied to a
we
chain. Didn't do that yet.
Tied to a fucking chain.
But it's implied that he's going to be killed. You know what I mean? He's going to be tortured for the information and then killed. So just to send him off to that fate, we're then going to reveal that, like, the person you cared about the most, the situation that rocked your world the most throughout this year of shit. I could have stopped it. Didn't. I let her die. Sorry.
Yeah. Whoa. Oh, and just completely, like, any hope or, like, basically it kind of just took, in that moment, it was like the devastation and loss of freedom.
Yeah.
For honestly, both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them. Like, the entire just like to dissolve their relationship was to completely lose, like it just ripped the freedom out of, like they have no more freedom of choice. There's no choices left to be made. Like the freedom's gone. And literally, quite literally for Jesse, more obviously on screen, I mean, Walt ultimately ends up having chooses to leave, which is him no longer to be free to be Walt at all. Right. Any version of Walter, any version of who he was in this now, what's a dead life to him. And for Jesse, like quite literally being held captive, he has no freedom and all of the hope that you have. I think that their relationship could have been at least one of the only things that could give a little bit of hope, but it's completely gone at that point. And so,
and honestly, it was just the unnecessary nail in the coffin. And honestly, it just shows his character where he is at that point too. Like where Walt is when he says that to Jesse, it's like, okay, I'm gonna break you into a million pieces before you go off to basically die.
Or what I think is you to go off to be killed.
That's how it's presented to him. He thinks that's what's going to happen. So right before he thinks where he's going to send his partner and this person that he cares about or cared about and all these other things, because I'm assuming he does it because he feels as though it's like that knee-jerk reaction of justice, as if Jesse didn't bring Hank out there, Hank would still be alive type of thing. Which I still, again, though, misplaced. Very misplaced, my guy.
Yeah.
So I think that is what that is showing, but still, like how dark is that? Like he's already being taken to be tortured and killed in your mind. That's what you think the reality is about to happen.
Which is why I think I felt
worse.
Yeah. And I think that's why I had felt such a contrast in like Hank's word, coming back to Hank's words to Walt at the end there. I felt such a heavy contrast there, is because it's like, dude, like Hank's willing to die for this, but are you?
Right.
Like, Hank's willing to die for this, but are you? And how are you not assuming that other people aren't willing to die for it? Which is where, like, I had a gripe about him just getting in the van and leaving. It's like, you're not even willing to die for it, but you're willing to kill Jesse.
Yeah,
you're willing to shoot him down and completely fucking stomp that out because no one's taking responsibility for their involvement in the situation. Hank accepting his death and his dignity in saying, no, I'm a DEA agent. I've accepted that
like, I'm not gonna let you get away.
The drug industry may be my demise. And that's what I signed up for. That he signed up for war, and that's the war he signed up for, right?
And that's the side.
And like I feel like that's part of the gripe that I had with Walter through the whole series, is that he never fully was like, like in this episode, we see him accepting that he is evil, like he's done evil things, and he accepts the villain side of him through the phone call with Skyler. But even him leaving in the van, like he still has not accepted, like that's the life he chose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, he's not saying it's more I want to be a part of the drug empire. I want to do this, and I'm doing this because I want to. Like, he hasn't accepted it. So it feels like we're like, because he's holding himself hostage in a situation that he's trying to it's like he's cosplaying.
Exactly. And we've said that before. It's like he's romanticized the whole thing in his head. He has an empire, he has money, and which he does, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
And he's making, he's got 80 million buried out in the desert. It's crazy. He does go and he creates it, but but again, it's like kind of the way we were saying, he's trying to have the best of both worlds and he can't.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why, so he's still not like, I am a drug lord, I am in this shit, I kill people, I do it. He has never I killed people because I want to make this meth and I want to get this back. It's,
because this is what I want to do.
Because I absolutely had to, or it's always a means to an end in his mind. It's never like, I killed him because I want to keep I want to keep cooking meth and making money.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so like watching John Wick, like that's why watching John Wick is fun, because John Wick accepts that he's John Wick. He's motherfucking John Wick.
He's the boogeyman.
Yeah, he's the fucking Baba Yaga. Like he's coming through. And then every time people are like, you have to get out of this business. And then he's like, okay, well, I'm getting out of the business. And then they're like, you'll never get out of the business. And then he's like, Yeah, you know what? You're right.
right.
But he accepts that
Yes.
that means that that's his end. He
Yes.
accepts that
I
that
will-
means that that is his end.
is how
And
I go out.
Walter is not willing to accept
No.
that that his end
He doesn't-
is his end, even though Hank just did a display of that he was willing to accept that that was his end. I think Jesse at some point in time had accepted that that was
I mean,
his
that's
end.
why he went out and just gave all the money away.
Exactly. Like, he just doesn't give a fuck anymore. Like, he's accepted.
I'm
Like,
done.
the drug
this
world
is it.
has
I'm done.
consumed him.
I went too far. I'm in too deep, and this is how I go.
Yeah, and like I
Mhm.
think Walter's so used to, as a science person, like he's so used to controlling the outcome of his processes and all of these things that he thinks that he can control the outcome of what it means to be involved in the drug industry and just get the pieces out of it that he wants. Like, it's like he's like treating it like a chemical like process where he's like,
manipulating
okay,
it.
well,
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
god, that's such a good parallel.
like where he's like, I'm just gonna dilute this and
Yes.
take a piece of this, and then I'm gonna straighten this out, and then maybe I'll heat this up over here a little bit, but I'm just gonna take that piece, and then I'm gonna move this around, and then it should get me this, right? Like, he's thinking about it too much in a literal sense and not realizing like you're playing. That's why I think like relating it to like a natural disaster, like the drug world it's brutal.
its own monster.
It's its own fucking monster that you cannot control. It's an entity. Skyler's final realization in this episode of like Walt's crimes like leads to that just terrifying confrontation where she grabs the knife.
She could go for a phone or the knife, and she said, "Fuck it."
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. She committed to that. She was like, "I'm not." She's like, "I can get the police involved this one, but how much of a danger is he to the rest of this family?" You know what I mean? So he just goes for the knife.
Yeah,
She
and
just
like
goes for the knife.
well,
first
and
even
like
getting,
finally, like Skyler probably feels like Walt Jr.'s like horrified.
Yeah.
Like, he is horrified by this discovery. He is like
his whole world's
just
upside down because how could it be
shattered?
that?
How could it be that? Like, and so I think like Skyler now has to, like, if she didn't feel obligated to protect Walt Jr. before, you know, where they were just trying to protect him from the information itself, she can't, she couldn't, now the information's out there, she can't do anything about that. Now all that's left is for her to double down and now protect him physically if she can, if she can even do that, like try to just protect the kids physically. And so that leads to this like insane fucking confrontation before the phone call happens. And in that moment, like, no, the family's just at this point, if it was hanging on by a thread, it's just completely torn apart. Their family's completely just ripped apart.
And that's what even makes the phone call in the beginning so impactful too, is you see how just easy it was. You see how truly like just light and easy.
And then like Walt fleeing with the only kid who doesn't have any grasp or understanding, kind of like a, you know, like a baby's kind of like a dog. It's just like, there's just an ounce of unconditional love. Like you're not expecting much from me other than the basics of what I have to give you. Like, you don't know any better. Right. Like, you're the only one that doesn't know any better to the things that have happened and ensued. And like, just leaving the rest of them to ruins. Like, that framing of Walter like above them and that like lower shot of him like holding the knife, like it's almost like it's literally like he committed the murder. Like the final like stab of the murder has happened and he's standing there with the weapon. But it's his own, and he's looking down at Skyler and Walt Jr. and like they frame it where they're like cowering next to the couch. Like, that scene like literally chills. Like, that is crazy. And he like is looking at this like weapon, which would normally be the weapon, but it's like his actions and his involvement in the crime world are actually the weapon, and he just like drops it, grabs Holly and fucking leaves. And then just Skyler like running out, like begging, like, don't take my baby, like all of this stuff. But it's like the last thing that he has. And I think again, it's him, like, just as he like turned to Jesse, you know, this is him now making another stab. Instead of stabbing Skyler literally with the knife, he's gonna take Holly and like that's hit her where it fucking hurts, because like he's hurting too. And so like and it's like he, instead of again like assuming that responsibility, he really doesn't assume responsibility until he gets to that phone call. And even then it's like now it pains him
because he saw it, because he felt it
to be terrible.
And then
and because it's like he needed to step away from a moment for a moment to connect all these pieces. Then he's like, fuck, but he still has to commit to what he did. if he even wants Skyler to actually be okay.
Yeah.
And so he's still, again, and that's where it's like, fuck, when it shifts back into the humility where like, it's like, damn, but he shot himself in the foot. Now he has to commit when he doesn't want to be that. He didn't want to be that.
He never viewed himself as that completely. You know what I mean? He still, he was doing it for with his family in mind. So I do think
which gives me, honestly, based on everything that we said, arguing about how, like, why maybe this entire time it was just like annoying or like, oh my God, why? Like, he's so dumb, like whatever we're saying, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, finally, like in a fucked up way, like he's like understanding that he comes to that realization is kind of like that's closure for me.
Oh yeah.
Like
because
for me as the type of viewer that I was, like, that's my closure. That's because closure. That's it.
Yeah, because it does. It gives you, it's like, okay, that's all we want. Just admit to your bad. Just admit you're bad.
Yeah.
You can be bad.
And he doesn't
just say you're bad though.
Yeah. He doesn't fully admit to it.
No.
And that's why I was saying, like, he still technically hasn't done it all the way, but like in some way, like if that's all I get,
I'll take it.
I'll take it. Like, I don't know how the next 2 episodes go, but like if that's all I get, then fine. I will accept that that's like without him actually saying it. He said something that alluded to it, and it was the intention behind it, and I get it. We read it. Like I get it. Like, yeah. And if I have to accept that that's what it is, then I get that.
And again, it's just so well done that, I mean, I don't think I'd want it any other way. I don't think I would, because honestly, Walt gets back into the drug business after all this shit. I just want to punch him in the face anyway, so I don't really need more from him.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a bad call.
Yeah. So I mean, like, the fallout really is just the devastation of all of it. So like, it's just crazy. But yeah, so now that we've kind of dug into like the thick of like all of that, I just want to touch on a couple notes that I have. Just other simple things that we can kind of like breeze through that are more obvious, but like the symbolism of the episode of the title. So we know that this is a direct reference to a poem, and our patron Jonah Messenger highlighted here, quote, Ozymandias is a sonnet written by the English Romantic poet Percy Baelish. I always say it wrong. Percy Bysshe. Percy Bysshe. And Bryan Cranston actually did a read of this. You can find it on YouTube. I've seen other content creators react to that either before or after the episode. Might be worth looking into it if y'all haven't heard of it already. So we did take his advice and many other commenters' suggestions, and we did watch Bryan Cranston's read of the poem before the episode, which at this point you guys have probably already seen that reaction, which did add another layer to our depth of the understanding of the title and its significance. And the poem does work seamlessly in tandem with the episode and really vividly depicts the transient nature of power and just the inevitable decay of the mightiest figures ever. I mean, across history.
Yeah.
And it's just a theme that does resonate powerfully with Walt's world as we're watching it fall apart finally around him in this episode. Leaving him with essentially nothing but the ashes of what was to be thought a great empire for him.
Right.
This legacy.
$80 million.
Yeah.
Woo, you got that legacy. Okay, so also just to kind of touch again on Walt's transformation, one of our patrons, how do you say that? Munir captured the, like, so we had talked about, like, from the moment Hank is killed and everything, all of Walt's original intentions and stuff were like canceled out, right?
Complex.
Yeah, and it's all because it was so many things. It's like he thought he was doing a good job, and then we slowly watch him like, okay, are you doing this for your family? Are you doing this just for money? You already have the money. Why are we still doing these things? Like, you could have walked away. We're not. You're building your empire. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So the complexity of it all, he states. Munir states that Walt is definitely evil and has been for most of the series. I also think it's crazy that some people think he's a good guy, even by the end. He does have a few redeeming qualities. Dismissing him as pure evil makes you blind to them. He can be very intelligent at times, especially when it comes to improvising, and he's also capable of rare selfless acts, saving Jesse from the 2 dealers, trying to sacrifice all of his money for Hank, purposefully incriminating himself on the phone call, etc. But he's also an impulsive egomaniac who causes most of the problems for himself and those around him. And, you know, like, it really is a duality of his character. Again, I think you're able to give Walt more grace, the more, you know what I mean? Like where your own personal boundaries are.
Yeah.
And I do think he's correct. I do think like the way that I'm just like a person who has like, nobody's good and evil. Nobody's black and white. Everybody's made of gray parts, right?
Yeah.
And Walt, and that's just a fact of life. You know what I mean? Like, so where we have our parts and where we're not willing to walk into that gray area anymore, it does shape the way you view Walt as a character.
Yeah, I mean, he's undeniably a villain at this point.
Right.
Like, we know that.
We know that. So there is nothing at that. But I do think,
but there are redeemable qualities.
There, again, I still believe that he had Jesse's best interest at heart until the very end. Like, I really did.
No, and it creates,
and,
and that's what creates this. Like, he is one of the most compelling and dynamic characters.
Absolutely, I gave him the benefit of the doubt with Brock. You know what I mean? Like, I was still giving it, while I still didn't like him and I didn't want that. I was still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. That they're like, oh, you're wrong. He did poison the kid. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. And then just want to touch on Skyler's realization and just like her heartbreak, and throughout the series, like she basically was kind of like ultimately became complicit in Walt's criminal activities, and like though she really genuinely most of the time was kind of like like under duress and a little bit more detached. Like she was doing her best to detach herself from a lot of her emotional involvement with Walter. Obviously, I think there's no going back in their relationship at a certain point. And mostly like a lot of her intentions were a bid to protect her family, which is clear in her being like, I have to protect them from the one like from you. And like in this episode, like the full extent of Walter's crimes kind of come to a head to her, and she finally accepts like the danger that she felt that he was posing to her and her children. And I think Hank's death is what really solidifies that for her.
Absolutely.
And his death allows her to have the realization that like she has to take drastic action at this point. And I think to her, she probably feels at this point that Walt is beyond redemption.
Yeah.
The fact that she was willing to draw a knife on him, like that is the biggest like physical leap of dedication that she's had.
The framing of it too.
Yeah. So she kind of moves from becoming this like wife trying to navigate her husband's drug career and like criminal life to a mother who is now fighting to save what's left of her family. Yeah. And like what's left of her.
The safety of it. Yeah. Because Skyler, there's no way Skyler even, like, you can see it on her face when Marie's talking to her, when all these things are being said, when she's like, this is the thing, I don't know how involved or whatever, like, when she's having that confrontation, but he's going down, we've got him. She's like, and Marie tells her, like, I hope my sister is somewhere in this right now. And, like, you can kind of see on Skyler's
face. It's a combination of Marie coming, I think it starts for her where Marie comes in to tell her like what Marie thinks is happening. But once she finds out, oh, like even though that's not what happened, we already told Walt Jr. and now Hank's dead. On top of that, the opposite happened. Hank's fucking dead. Like she's like, I'm not fucking leaving with you. Like I can't do this. And that's why I think when they show the phone or the knife, I'm like, okay, is she calling the police? Is she hurting herself? Is she hurting Walter? Like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah,
that's
like
the piece. It's like where and it's like her trust because honestly though, let's be real about this though too. He keeps getting away.
Yeah.
Like, so, calling the police, what's that going to do? That gives him another chance to get away, getting that knife.
Well, it's like Jesse was saying, he can't keep getting away with this. Yeah. But one of our patrons, Tom Ferris, sorry if I'm saying the last name wrong, he pointed out something really important about Skyler's role in the episode, and even really truly just how she resonates throughout the series, even though she gets a lot of hate. But he says, the episode where everything comes apart. Everything Walt has been telling himself crumbles. The facade comes crashing down. I feel like this episode also really emphasizes the importance of Skyler's character to this story. It doesn't quite work without her, no matter what her haters say. So to me, like this comment, Tom's comment totally nails it. Skyler is really essential to the story and really essential to this episode because she's kind of like the final like like domino in
Right.
essence, like because his intention started with his family, like she's the final collapse, like
Right.
and
For
and
sure.
she holds the family.
And she's also a really good mirror and perspective of where Walt is at in this stuff. Because think about it, we thought Skyler was super annoying in the first few seasons because she's like the pot, the marijuana, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think, guess what? Like, we go from her who's freaking out that her husband's smoking pot, to her laundering his meth business money. Like, really though, like,
and then
that's
to her
so,
brother-in-law dying,
right? Like, it's
and her baby being stolen. Fuck. No, literally.
So you
and so
really,
it just underscores, like, this is like, if
like
you
it's
could underscore
underlining everything that's going on with the transformation of Skyler, and what's happening to Skyler.
No, like
it's
literally underscore everything that
it's the
she's
through
been
line.
through. It's her through line.
It's the through line.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like it shows not just him unraveling, but it's her breaking point too.
Mm-hmm.
And like her fighting back against this like monster that's just inside Walt, like her finally like fighting back, and like she's like now like the dog that's backed into the corner, like she's got to bite now. Like,
exactly.
If she was gonna bite ever, she's got to fucking bite now.
Yeah, because it's kind of like you said, like she was very complicit in all of it. You know what I mean? Like she walked in the pool and they didn't have the kids for 3 months. That's all she did. She didn't really like truly push back against Walt.
Yeah, and and the reason why I think she's pivotal is because without like Skyler's actions, for one, in this episode and just throughout the entire series, the emotional depth and the stakes of the episode, I don't think would hit as hard. I think you need her to have this complete just breakdown. Like she has to have the breakdown too, because now it's that also just fucking just rips it apart. So I agree. I agree with Tom.
So a comment from Daniel Bajork, and I'm so sorry if I am butchering these names. I am terrible at reading things phonetically. He points out, and this is in reference to Jesse, for me, one of the best moments in the entire series is when Walt tells Jesse he saw Jane die. It's set up so well. You know eventually that's going to come back up, but you assume Jesse will find out and that will create a breaking point for the relationship. Absolutely. I thought that was going to be the point. I completely agree, and instead, Walt just straight tells him out of spite. It really subverted the way we intuitively thought they would do the reveal. And it does. And again, that's kind of like what like I said at the top of the discussion, is
it blindsided
I could
me.
I could never expect the turns and the twists and the changes that those writers put in, because again, for Walt to do it just out of spite, like, I think that is so huge and telling.
Blindsided. It's so painful. Like, in the most painful way possible that he could have done that.
Ray Johnson also commented on our Patreon that he was still rooting for him after he gives up Jesse and tells him about James. I'm finally to a point where I can say I hate him.
Yeah. And that was he responded back to Daniel, and like just kind of echoed the same sentiment. So yeah, that's just kind of a brief quote from his comment. The end of the band's broken up, man. The band's broken up. So
no coming back from that.
Yeah, and then I think just a couple other things. Just the visual storytelling. I think we point out the cinematography a lot throughout our reaction in the episode, and it meticulously moves throughout scenes, or the camera's placed in specific ways. They even did post editing to reflect the chaos and the devastation of the narrative that they wrote out for this episode.
Oh, and I think it, just to kind of go with that too, I think it's, I'm sorry if that's in the piece. I can't remember.
Just say it.
It's just like, even though, so the fact that they even went so far as like they came back and the last scene they shot was the first scene. I think like it's just the effort of the world building and everything else, so they look the same as they did when they first started the series. I think that's just like really a dedication to their editing and their cinematography and how they want everything to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of in this episode, we get more of those wide, desolate shots when he's in the desert, like rolling the barrel. And even like we already spoke about the opening scene and how that kind of juxtaposes with the flashbacks of Walt and Jesse's first cook. And then, to the aftermath of the shootout that we end or open into again after that. And just the use of the barren landscape that's available to them in New Mexico when they were filming this near Albuquerque, and just like the vast emptiness of the desert, like, and just everything that like surrounds that.
Yeah.
And how hollow that feels and how hollow this now feels.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, for him just rolling that
barrel for miles, it felt like
it's perfect because he's rolling it through nothing because all he now has is this 10 million, and it's the symbolism, you know.
Yeah.
He's lost everything, but he's got the money still.
Yeah.
He's rolling it through nothing. He's rolling it to nothing.
Yeah, like it's this vast like openness, just like this desolate like barren land, which really symbolizes like the emptiness now that is like Walt's life has become. Like it's completely empty. It's just all hollow. There's nothing there. And there may be nothing there for miles. And even when he does find somebody, the only thing he has to go off of is the money. Is the money that literally like that's it.
Money
consumed
is
him.
the motive.
It's the root of all the evil for him at this point. And so yeah, okay. And then really like the other like particularly powerful shot is Hank's death, Walt collapsing to the ground.
Oh yeah.
And the camera kind of pulls back to reveal like his figure is like just dwarfed again by this vast desert. And it to me really represents like his loss of control.
Yeah.
And the insignificance of like what was supposed to be like this great empire and all these grand schemes, and like just kind of like shrinks him down to this like pebble in the middle of all of it. But it was just really striking, like visually. They just like so many moments.
What they're doing so like, I can't like give them more praise because truly like the way that they exactly how you just said it, like he shrinks, it's small, you make it feel so like the way that they put so much emotional build like it from the music to the video to the way it's shot to the acting to the words of the script, you know what I mean? They put so much to make you feel a certain way into it.
Yeah. And
it's very well done.
Yeah. And I already spoke about the visual framing of his fight, the knife fight with Skyler in the living room. But I do like their use of like the unstabilized camera, because that too can add a lot of like movement and like like feeling unstable in the visual can add to the unstableness of the scene. And so I did like that because it added to it just makes it feel more volatile. It makes it feel as volatile as it really is.
Yeah, exactly. As if you were there experiencing it yourself.
Yeah. And so basically, you know, like Johnson throughout the direction, he does a lot of visual cues to create this like emotional gravity throughout all of the scenes. And so I really just want to respect that, because that also too, that it's the way, it's almost this detached way. It's like that fourth wall that you don't think about too often when you're watching this.
It's like being herded. It's like we're being herded in such an emotional way, like, and it's just so well done.
Yeah, I mean, things as small as just shadows and lighting. I mean, the like stable cameras versus not destabilizing them, things like that. And then really just sound and design, to me, you know me, I love a good sound. And I
love a good sound.
I love good sounds. Okay,
but I hate bad sounds.
Unless it's ASMR hell and Stranger Things.
Yeah, let's be very real about something. We hate and love sounds. It's one or the other.
But I have to point out the sound design for this episode specifically, because I didn't, until I was doing more research, I didn't really think about it until after the episode and like reading into it more. So the composer is Dave Potter. So his score for the episode is really sparse, but it actually makes it more powerful, to me, at least, when I was looking at it and watching it back. So he allowed a lot of the natural sounds of the environment of this episode to just evolve, and to be more dominant throughout. And I think that also enhances the realism of
without
the
having
scenes.
a crazy amount of like back music and everything else. Yeah, you're more involved in it's happening in real time.
Yeah, similar to the unstable camera. It's like by allowing like the natural elements and natural sounds that are happening within scenes to just be what they are, like creates this way different immersive experience. And I think one of the most effective uses of sound is in the aftermath of Hank's death. Again, like that scene is just so powerful. But there is a silence that follows the gunshot that is literally deafening. And he allowed it to create this void that then only is filled with Walt.
Yeah.
Just like his anguish and like this sob. Yeah, that like this uncontrollable, just like his breathing, like it's and that's it. Like if you go back and look at it, that's all that's there. And so I think there are smart times where they choose to forego music, and other shows have done this too. And I think because of how just emotionally intense what's happening on screen, I was so immersed in it, I didn't even realize that that was what was happening.
Right.
And that's the point. Like, it's raw.
It's setting the scene.
Yeah, and ambient.
Telling the story.
Yeah, and it got me. Like, exactly what they want that to do is to create an emotional impact. The choice to forego any other sounds and just use the raw elements. Yeah, and I think there's just like a lot of other like small things, like the crunching of the gravel under the barrel as he's walking, or Jesse's chains like dragging across the cement.
One. I was gonna bring that up. That is a big obvious one where it's like they get him up, he chains him, and then he literally just rams him down, and it's like, oh. Yeah,
and it's like everything in this that they did, it kind of creates this like echo chamber almost. It's so freaking
It's like
good.
He tried to get out of cooking. He left Walt to do it, and now he's back in there, and he's chained to do what he didn't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
He wanted out.
And the music in this one present is more just for like transition as opposed to like overpowering any like scene or element, because everything is the show is speaking for itself at this point.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, because
they usually are using music to either, what am I trying to say here? I want you to say something, dilute the violence. For example, when they are doing the stabbing scenes, or when they get all the Mike's men in prison, like when they're killing all of them.
Yeah.
It's like music where it's like,
yeah.
jams, because they're like literally lighting a human
like
man
a tango
on fire.
or like,
and they're doing that. So I think it's really telling that in this, because they want it to be, they want you to feel the rawness and the realness of the situation.
Yeah.
That's why they aren't adding in the music.
Yeah. So it's like there are ways to like, you can use music in specific ways to complement the emotional escape that you're trying to create. And if they were trying to create this like echo chamber and like desolate feeling and really immerse you in what's going on the screen, like the less like audio that they can include in that doesn't have to do with what's just happening on the screen.
Right.
The more you'll be immersed in the senses that are being directed to the actual scene that's happening and the noises that are present. Right. And if the noises that are present are only related to like Walt crying out or breathing, then that's all you can focus on visually and audibly. Like that's all you're getting. And so I think that's just really smart. Yeah, good way to compare that. That's a great callback, because that scene like is basically kind of like it's an instrumental cut, like a music video.
If they would have done it without like that music, imagine how like actually traumatizing that would be.
No,
watching somebody get lit on fire to hear all those other signs. But they pair it with that positive, like that music where it's like, well, this is a fun song, but this isn't fun. But I kind of feel like this is okay.
Yeah,
like I can watch it.
Yeah. And I just think overall, like this episode, it really is just like a benchmark of what television can achieve. And I think a lot of shows have been trying to pace, I think, probably with this since then.
I would assume so, yeah.
Because I mean, we get stuff like just like more network channels that are willing to do more brutal things.
Yeah, because this was like really the first time we're seeing that on just like a standard cable TV channel, not HBO. Not
I mean, like True Detective. Like that's a mini series that doesn't run nearly as long as this, but like, that's definitely just as brutal. And like, there's also an emotional.
HBO.
See, okay, so
HBO, Showtime, all those cable ones, like they were really the ones doing the kind of hard hitting different stuff. So for this to come on like basic cable though was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just an interesting like it feels like, you know, if I could sum it up, it's kind of like a cautionary tale just about like the consequences of your actions as an individual. So like ultimately, like consequences, which is so funny that we offered that sentiment towards the beginning of the series. Like, where are the consequences?
Like, we're like,
where's the consequence? Oh, the
feel like
consequence
this was-
was nestled very harshly in the last few episodes of the very last season. Like, they're like, don't fucking worry. Like,
Don't you worry. We're
don't
gonna bring
you
him
worry.
up.
Like
We're
a
gonna bring him up.
slow, I've never been slow burned to a consequence.
That's
like,
true.
So yeah, it feels like I need a fucking cigarette, dog.
Yeah,
I don't
like-
even smoke.
It's like, yo, you know,
God.
this is, you know, it's like we've seen some shit. It's like you want a cigarette because you just be like, man, that was a lot. I've seen so much.
Yeah.
I know too much now.
Yeah, and I just think like no, it like reminds us as viewers that like even the whole thing being surrounded like Ozymandias, like the greatest empires, like whether it is a fictional empire or your reality, like none of us are immune to decay. It's the circle of life, like whatever
Ooh.
you get involved in. Yeah.
Sorry, it's
fucked
decay
up,
and
but
then the
it's
circle of life, and I
true.
was like, ow.
No, eventually,
Don't
you
make
know,
me think about my mortality
things
right
come to
now.
death.
No, don't make me think about it right now.
yes.
Ow.
I wonder what he'll use his new identity for. Like,
Well, why is he back?
well,
Like,
yeah,
think about
because
it, we've
that's
got
the
2
cold
more
open
episodes.
from the beginning. Yeah.
From the beginning of the season. Why is he back?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is he switching cars? Why has he got guns? What is he about to do right now?
Yeah.
Do you think he's going back to rescue Jesse?
But I think that I would assume that Jesse's fucking dead.
Or
Unless he
he's
heard
being
something.
held-
But that's
he's
the thing,
being held
I don't
prison
know-
to enforce the cook math.
I can never anticipate like
No, nothing.
like
Nothing.
what communication actually is happening. And so I don't know. We got
Who
2 more
knows?
episodes, so we'll really see. But I think like as a whole, it's just that inevitable destruction will come if you have unchecked trauma, like
Yeah.
unchecked ambitions, and too much hubris. Like there's just it's
It's a recipe for disaster for sure.
So, but essentially we just like want to encourage you guys as our viewers, if you made it through this entire little basically podcast
We
at
did a
this point. We basically did a podcast. We just filmed for 2 hours just to share like your favorite scenes or any lines from Ozymandias, or even just across the entire series, in the comments if you guys want to interact with us. And I'd love to know what moments just resonated deepest with you guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's
There's so
so
many.
much. It's hard to pick from. But just kind of how this, I would love to just know more about how this episode like impacted you guys as viewers, especially those of you who got to watch this as it was airing on TV.
And let me know about the commercials, please.
Yeah, let us know. Was
Sorry.
there just like an Arby's commercial
Like,
slapped
where's-
right after
like,
Hank
where's
gets
the bait?
shot? Like where
Like-
were they cutting in commercials? Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I'd just love to hear your thoughts, and like we're always down to dig into further discussion about the shows that we're watching. But yeah, Ozymandias is just a monumental episode for television. Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So whether or not you're just here for like just the reactions, or you're here because you want to be part of the discussions or deeper dives into things, like we just want to say thank you. And we appreciate every single one of you immensely.
So much.
And if you enjoyed this discussion and you do want to see more, don't forget to like the video and be sure to subscribe, and yeah, comment with your thoughts.
Comment with your thoughts. Hey, comment with your thoughts. Woo.
Well, either way, your engagement in any way helps us reach more viewers and helps us keep conversations like this going. So yeah.
Thanks for watching with us, guys, and discussing with us and
Yeah.
hanging out. And you know what? We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
See you guys.